All right, now to Washington, where the Trump administration's new tariffs for Canada and Mexico are expected to go into effect at any minute. The U.S. is slapping 25% tariffs on imports from its two biggest trading partners, along with a 10% tax on goods from China. Trump announced the tariffs as part of an effort to reduce the number of migrants coming to the U.S. Let's bring in now Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times, Lynn Sweet. Lynn, welcome. Great to see you. All right, so this was a campaign promise, but Trump admitted that there could be an initial rise in prices over these tariffs. In fact, he said, he's warning that, and I'm quoting him, there will be a temporary short-term disruption. Why is the president feeling like this is the right thing to do, and now?
Well, first of all, hi, Fred. Good to be on. So let me just set the stage here. One of the many reasons that Trump likes tariffs is that it's a tool he has that he could use without consulting Congress and with actually not consulting anyone on this. I don't know if Trump voters who were said to have voted in part because they want lower prices signed up for a short-term, quote, disruption, which I take to mean higher prices. Because there are a lot of unknowns that could happen with tariffs, including triggering retaliation, meaning we could have, the consumer could end up paying higher prices for all kinds of things, and igniting a broader trade war. Those are just some of the first things that could happen as he rolls this out. And also take into account that Canada and Mexico are the largest trading partners of the United States.
Mm-hmm. And among those things where people could end up paying more, car parts, lumber, gas, produce. Those are just some of the things coming from
Yes.
Canada, Mexico, and even China. So in addition to that, we've also seen this administration take on diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, head on. On Friday, the Defense Department announced it will no longer host what it called Cultural Awareness Months. That includes Black History Month, which began today, and many other celebrations. So what message is this sending to the Defense Department employees and other citizens?
Well, I think this is part of the war, in a sense, on acknowledging that the United States has race-related issues, problems, trying to, in a sense, whitewash the realistic situation that there has not been equal hiring across the board for qualified people. And erasing these special interest months is just, I think, an easy way to send messages that really have something to do with holidays and observances that honor certain groups, and otherwise it just seems designed to, in a sense, weaponize all of these programs, not all of which have to do with diversity hiring. One quick point I'd like to make. So Biden made a very big deal, Biden and then Judiciary Chairman Dick Durbin, that they were appointing and confirming a diverse series of judges. So the point is that for some reason, let's just take my state, Illinois. Since 1818, when it was a state, all the judges at all levels in the federal judiciary were basically white men. Now, that doesn't mean, that does have to mean, almost, as the famous common sense that Donald Trump wants people to use, since that's what he does. There had to be something going on that only white men were able to get through the door. And all some of these programs do is let everybody through the door, and then you figure out who's qualified or not. Now, that is, now we're going into a new chapter, not sure how it's going to turn out. I think wiping out these holidays is part of the symbolic as well as substantive drive that Trump and his administration is making.
Okay, and then something else that's impacting information, transparency, accountability. The Pentagon has announced plans to swap out mainstream media outlets under a new rotational program. Many of the outlets will now have a workspace in the Pentagon press corps that are pro-Trump organizations. One American News, Breitbart, the New York Post will replace NBC News, NPR, the New York Times. President Trump routinely blasts coverage and media outlets that he disagrees with, and that continued at the White House briefing just this week. Take a listen.
You are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane, you think that's going to make a difference?
Does it come for their families?
They are a group of people that have lost their lives. I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you.
The implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's website. No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety.
What I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration too. So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in and he changed it.
That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense.
Now, this is representation of the New York Times, CNN, NBC News. I mean, so this kind of underscores the challenges of challenging this White House. And again, with the sole purpose of accountability, transparency, information. So what are we looking at in the road ahead?
It's going to be very tough. And there's no issue if you want to expand who gets into the briefing rooms, but especially in the Pentagon, you really have a specialty reporting there with people who know the military, who know and have been seasoned reporters covering conflicts and know the inner workings and know the chain. They just understand the different armed services. So widening who gets in to ask questions isn't the point. I think as much as that, look at even in what you showed, how President Trump tried to just insult his way out of answering a question. Let's go back to common sense, which I talked about before. I'm glad you played that clip. Mm-hmm. Doesn't common sense tell you that you can't draw a judgment about what caused a plane crash before you studied the evidence? Everybody out there who's listening to me, whether you voted for Trump or not, let's use common sense. And how do you address that? I think at the time that Caitlin asked her questions, I don't know if if both black boxes had been retrieved. One might not have yet, much less analyzed. So maybe
at that time,
was he?
Bodies were still being retrieved and pulled out of the water. And no, those boxes had not been retrieved yet. And that's what those investigative bodies are all about. Those investigative agencies are all about, investigating, getting to the bottom of why this happened.
Yes, and so the conversation I hope we have as a civic community here. President Trump is our president. He's elected, but use your common sense in evaluating what you heard for yourself. Some things are simpler to analyze than others. Tariffs, we could go back and forth about who's really going to pay, but we'll know soon, by the way, in what you pay. Common sense. There was a terrible collision. Helicopter, plane, most of the debris still in the Potomac. How can any reasonable person come to a conclusion as to the cause of that crash?
All right.
Everyone I beg you, I'm begging you all, just to take that into account as you and I, Fred, have a conversation here.
Lynn Sweet, well said. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
An Israeli American was one of the hostages released by Hamas a short time ago. We'll see the reaction from his family straight ahead. You're in the CNN Newsroom.